Among the coldest places in the country right now. The actual temperature without the wind chill could get as low as -30 degrees. Let's take a look at these Minneapolis firefighters showing just how cold it is. You can see what happens when they remove their helmet. The steam just rising right off of them. And ABC's Eva Pilgrim, she is there in Chicago. We know you have lots of layers on, Eva, but for many people it's really not safe to be outside in these conditions.
Well, that's why we're starting this off inside, because it is dangerously cold outside. You can get frostbite in just a matter of mere minutes in these temperatures. Okay, we're going to take a deep breath and we are heading outside so we can show you just how cold it is out there. And as you get out here, I've got some hot water. I'm just going to throw it in the air. You can see it very quickly turns into ice and snow.
The slow wind through Yongala National Park in Queensland, the signs are visible. Pockets of the landscape left charred and scarred by one of 130 bushfires that raced across the state late last year.
2.5 kilometres in 15 minutes. This come from this side of the valley, right across the valley.
Tess Ford had a front row view from the edge of her pup's perch.
So the fireball is pretty much right there.
Of a fire that tore through the valley below.
The Thursday morning was the morning that I got up, and there was a massive fireball out the front here.
What makes this particular fire stand out is that it took place in a rainforest. One real defense a rainforest has from any outside threat is its perimeter. Once that perimeter is compromised or damaged in any way, as we saw here a couple of months ago, there's nothing stopping that threat from racing through. Other extreme weather events played a role in fueling the devastating fires.
We'd had the damage from Cyclone Debbie in 17. It had shredded the canopy of the rainforest, allowing more light, more drying, and obviously put a lot more fuel on the ground.
And periods of hot, dry weather created the perfect invitation.
What we're seeing in the last few decades, of course, is that projections of climate change are increasingly becoming observations of climate change.
The United Nations says natural disasters affected more than 60 million people around the world in 2018, claiming more than 10,000 lives.
That dangerous cold blast still bearing down on the Midwest, now settling into the East Coast this morning.
Let's take a look at Wisconsin right now. Look at those temperatures right there, -16 degrees. So many people waking up to so much cold. Upstate New York, lake effect snow is coming down. You see it right there. They could get more than a foot on top of what they already have.
And that deep chill is moving in fast. Let's take a look at this time-lapse video showing a snow squall sweeping through New York City in an instant, bringing whiteout conditions and bitter air came behind that.
You know what? That was right outside of my window, my apartment window. I saw that when it happened.
Yeah, and I was having lunch, and my back was to the door, and I turned around. I'm like, where did that come from? Yeah, out of nowhere.
That's it. So here is what we know right now. The cold has caused at least 8 deaths, and this morning 29 states are under cold and snow alerts. We have team coverage. Ginger is back. She's starting us off here in Times Square with the latest. Good morning, Ginger.
The question is, why did I come back? It feels about 100 degrees colder here than I was about 12 hours ago, and so many of you have been dealing with this for at least 3, if not 5 days. So let's talk about it. This morning we bottomed out at 2 here. That is the coldest since the winter of 2016. It feels like 17 below. And folks in Duluth, Minnesota are actually seeing schools closed because of the cold. Look how cold it got. 55 below 1985. So it's seriously once in a generation here. So how cold is it this morning? Well, Detroit feels like 33 below. It feels like 1 below in Cincinnati.
Standards, the INF Treaty is an example. You have heard from colleagues today in unison on who is in violation of that treaty. We maintain open to dialogue. The door is open. We'll have a meeting again today. So the United States has not closed the door on that, but again, we're here to uphold the standards of arms control regimes.
The INF Treaty between the U.S. and former Soviet Union was signed in 1987. It bans land-based cruise and ballistic missiles with a range of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. The U.S. has been accusing Russia of violating the treaty, and in October, U.S. President Donald Trump announced his plans to pull out. Russia has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and accused the United States of refusing to negotiate.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning.
And this is something we've been looking at for the past several years, that the dance between the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere balances out because of the natural cyclical events of the atmosphere, the whole system. When one shrinks, the other expands and then goes back and forth. And global sea ice is well above normal because the Antarctic is so far above normal. This is a global issue, isn't it? We're supposed to look all over the place.
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes.
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
While you're worried about Lindsay Lohan, they're controlling the weather like Storm from the X-Men. Yeah, they're spraying toxic material on us. They claiming that it's too hot, we're blocking the sun.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
And they say the unusual-looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails. It's a belief gaining popularity here in Colorado. So, is there really poison in the sky?
Could be filling central west skies with dangerous chemicals. Opponents of these mysterious chemtrails.
Now, there are some folks who feel that there are chemtrails that are also coming out of planes. It is a conspiracy theory that we are getting pollution being to manipulate the atmosphere, either for behavioral control, weather control, some type of control.
Is the government spraying dangerous chemicals over us from planes? Some people believe there's a sinister top-secret mission that's making us sick.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering initiatives. Now, I could go on and on and on and on about the things that fascinate me, but rather than talk about them, I thought I'd stop here.
A
A deadly winter storm is blasting snow and ice along a 1,400-mile stretch from the Central Plains to the Mid-Atlantic coast. Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis, and even the Washington, D.C. area could get up to a foot of snow. At least 7 people have been killed on slippery roads in Missouri, Kansas, and Indiana.
And for a second time this week, powerful snowstorms will hammer parts of the Midwest with potentially blizzard conditions. 2 storms will then make their way towards the Northeast this weekend, where more than a foot of snow could fall from Northeast Pennsylvania up through northern New England.
And we begin tonight with the deadly winter storm stretching from the Midwest to the east. More than a foot of snow in some parts. Virginia's governor declaring a state of emergency. Many highways dangerous even for Sanders and snowplows. A truck there overturning in Fairfax County, Virginia. And a Delta passenger jet carrying more than 120 people sliding off the tarmac at Cincinnati Airport. And take a look at this, snow blanketing the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, turning the summer destination into a winter wonderland. The system pushing snow and brutal cold into the Northeast tonight. Wind chills in the teens by the morning.
Blizzard warning is in place in parts of California's high country. Residents have been stocking up for the extreme conditions.
Yeah, everybody's just been constantly flowing in and out and stopping in to get food, and it's been crazy.
The crazy weather will push across the country. It's expected to bring snow and ice to millions. Winter has also arrived in Florida, where cold temperatures forced water parks in Orlando to shut down today.
And closer to home, brutally cold air is moving into our region, something people are blaming on the polar vortex.
Polar vortex.
It's already enough to endure frigid winter conditions. But what happens when we get an unwelcome visit from an even colder spell? You might have heard this term before, the polar vortex.
A polar vortex is simply that, a vortex that originates over the polar regions. And because it starts over the polar regions, it has Arctic air. During the wintertime, as the polar vortex comes southward into central Canada, it can deliver cold air all the way down toward the Gulf Coast.
When high pressure builds into the Arctic Circle, the polar vortex is pushed south and away from the pole, giving it an opportunity to sink into the U.S. So when the polar vortex encroaches in your area, be prepared for the Arctic chill.
Until the imbalance that created them is corrected. In this case, we're talking about a global realignment. The superstorm will last 7 to 10 days. When it's over, ice and snow will cover the entire northern hemisphere. The ice and snow will reflect sunlight. The Earth's atmosphere will restabilize, but with an average temperature close to that of the last ice age.
What can we do about this?
Head as far south as possible.
That is not amusing, Professor.
Where do you suggest they go?
The farther south they go, the safer they'll be. Texas, parts of Florida that aren't flooded. Mexico would be best.
Mexico. Maybe you should stick to science and leave policy to us.
Well, we tried that approach. You didn't want to hear about the science when it could have made a difference.
What exactly are you proposing, Professor?
Evacuate everyone south of that line.
What about the people in the north?
I'm afraid it's too late for them. If they go outside, the storm will kill them.
I wanted to ask a couple questions here about HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HAARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HAARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation and then a more direct question. Would you be disappointed or would you lose something if HAARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HAARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. So very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HAARP?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site. We have put out a call government-wide for other agencies that had interest in managing the site or taking it over, and including going out to academia and seeing if there was any interest there. We have gotten interest from the university in Fairbanks. However, the interest we have is that they will run it if we fund it, which is unfortunately in this fiscal environment we're in right now, this is not an area that we have any need for in the future and don't see that it would be good use of Air Force S&T funds in the future. So our position has been that if there's not somebody who wants to take over the management and the funding of the site, then the Air Force has no future need, and that we do plan to do a dismantle of the system in the future after we make appropriate notifications.
When you say in the future, do you anticipate that it would be this summer then, or would there perhaps be more time for the university to try to figure something out?
We would prefer to start this summer. We would like to get the critical equipment out of the site before the winter. The harsh winter in Alaska does lead to a very costly winterization to maintain the site, and we'd like to avoid that if we can.
Okay. Mr. Schaefer, if you have any comments on that?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm torn on this because my background is as an atmospheric scientist, and I think the facility is just a world-class facility. That said, we've worked very hard with the Air Force, with the Office of Science and Technology Policy over the last 18 to 24 months to find another sponsor for this, because it really, as you've heard the other people at the table, we, the department, have gotten the research value out that we need for the facility. We've also worked with University of Alaska Fairbanks to get some other person to pick up the long-term, just pure scientific research that HAARP offers the promise of. But with all the other issues and problems and challenges facing the department at this time, we just don't see that investment over a long-term period is where we would prioritize our investment. So we've been working with other agencies, trying to get agencies like National Science Foundation, Department of Commerce, who runs the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, to pick up the HAARP facility. No one else wants to step up to the bill, ma'am.